Thank you all for joining us this morning. Before we begin, I would like to have our immediate past president, Cheryl Villegas Walker, to lead us in the pledge.
If you'd all please stand, place your hand over your heart as we honor the greatest nation. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Ms. Villegas Walker. And good morning again to all of you. As the president of the Southern California Association of Government, it is my pleasure to welcome you to the 7th Annual Southern California Economic Summit. And I would be remiss, and it's not in my talking point, if I didn't thank the leadership of Larry McCollum, one of our prior presidents, for really making this a priority when he was president. Thank you, Larry. As I look out into the audience and think about how far we've come, and how this summit has grown, I am humbled to be in your presence. When we first launched this summit back in 2010, our economy was in a much different place. We are talking about lost jobs. And I think back then, that was 1 million jobs lost, by the way. Like we always do as a region, we have always bounced back. And that is due in large part to the hard work and dedication from those of you in this room. We have to look towards the future. However, and we must keep moving forward. Sometimes we get wrapped up in where our economy is going, or where it's going to go today or tomorrow. But today, we need to move our conversation towards what our economy would do for the future. The things that will bring success and prosperity to our region's 18.9 million people. You're going to hear the word innovation today, and we've talked about innovation here in the SCAG region for some time. And not too long ago, we had a presenter at SCAG, and I'm not going to mention his name because I think many of you that were in the room know who that person is. And when he spoke about innovation, and you look at our new kind of tagline for SCAG, we really embrace that word of innovation. And that's certainly what I'm saying here today is not in my talking point either, but when I look at all of you here in the room, and I see the progress that we all have made in our own region, in our own cities, in our own counties, we have a lot to be proud of. So let's give each other a round of applause. Our economy has the DNA to deliver, and by embracing innovation, our economy can thrive. We are here today because we want to build a prosperous Southern California for the decades and generations to come. And we certainly talk about millennials all the time, and I know our executive director, Hassan Arkrada, loves talking about millennials. And so that certainly, we have a lot to look forward here in Southern California and in this region. The partnership SCAG, we are examples of how we can work together for a better future, and that is through collaboration. Collaboration is key, and that's something that SCAG has been able to do very well. And so I would be also remiss if I didn't thank Hassan Arkrada, our executive director, and the wonderful staff here at SCAG. Let's give them a round of applause. One of our key partners in bringing you here today is the Southern California Leadership Council. The Southern California Leadership Council was founded in 2005 as a nonpartisan, nonprofit, business-led public policy partnership of business and community leaders. The Leadership Council unites businesses, community leaders from throughout Southern California into one effective leadership organization whose membership includes 3 former California governors and 24 presidents and CEOs from the top Southern California companies. Today, we are honored to have Governor Gray Davis, the co-chair of the Leadership Council, with us here today. He will open up this economic summit. As we all know, he is the 37th governor of the state of California from 1999 to 2003. Governor Davis has spent nearly 30 years of his life dedicated to public service. That deserves a round of applause. As governor of California, he actively worked to improve California's education system, signing legislation to increase spending to provide new statewide accountability programs. He signed legislation in 2002 that resulted in California being the first in the nation to require automakers to limit auto emissions. Since leaving office, he has appeared, and we are near Hollywood. He has appeared in various shows like The Tonight Show, The Late Show with David Letterman. He even had a cameo on the CBS station. So he's not the only governor with a Hollywood resume. We are glad to have our governor here this morning, so please help me in welcoming Governor Gray Davis.
Thank you, Michelle, for your leadership and for that kind introduction. I don't think Arnold feels threatened by my few appearances on TV, but I have to tell you, you remind me of a story that, I never blamed Arnold for the recall because he didn't start it. He took advantage of it like a lot of other people did, including Larry Flint. When I'm voting, I have to wait. Larry Flint and I are actually entering the voting booth at the same time, so I said, after you, Mr. Flint. Many people participated in that election, but we shared policies on the environment, on public safety, and did a number of things after I left office. I supported him publicly, a number of press conferences. So one day he calls me up. He says, "What are you doing tonight?" I said, "Not too much." He says, "Well, I'm going to be on The Tonight Show. I'm going to be interviewed by Jay Leno. You're going to walk on stage and surprise us. Jay Leno's going to say, 'How's Arnold doing?' And you're going to say he's doing a hell of a lot better than he did in Hercules in New York," which was his first picture. So anyway, we turned out we were dressed the same way. I had no idea what he was going to wear, but it was like twins, and got a lot of acclaim. I'm very proud to be here again to tell you how much the Southern California Leadership Council values its relationship with SCAG. SCAG is a phenomenal organization. It's been so effective in working with us and other partners that you have in doing things we all care about, fighting for middle-class jobs, protecting goods movement, protecting transportation issues, making sure Washington and Sacramento understand that Southern California economy is a little different than the Northern California economy. It's a little different than the Central Valley economy. So policies have to take that into account. That could not happen without the partnership and relationship we've had. We focused on all those issues together. We focused on poverty, economic development as well. So I really, really want you to know how much the Southern California government, the Southern California Leadership Council values this partnership, wants it to continue, and wants to do anything we can to be a good partner going forward. We have an interesting group. When I first joined it, I learned one thing all three governors, 2 Republicans and Democrats, have in common. Whatever the problem was, it was never the governor's fault. Never. You have to take an oath to that effect to join. I want to talk about an issue that many of you may think is not a pressing problem, but I believe there's no more pressing problem than what I want to talk about, which is the need for America to continue to produce good jobs for people who come out with a high school education, a community college education, a 4-year degree. We have to find a way to let everyone participate in the American dream. And what is the American dream? The American dream is you're educated, you pursue your passion, you play by the rules, you work hard, and for generations, people have enjoyed some measure of success, a great deal of success. However you look at it, there is upward mobility. I don't know if you recall the sitcom in the 80s called The Jeffersons, but the theme song was Moving On Up. So people were experiencing upward mobility. I like to say John Kennedy, a quote John Kennedy saying, a rising tide lifts all boats. So my dinghy doesn't have to rise at the same rate as your yacht, but if I feel I'm making progress, things are getting better, making more money, I can educate my family, spend a little money, take a trip, save for retirement, I feel I am participating, I'm a winner, I feel good about myself. We now have the lowest workforce participation rate since the 1970s. The campaign was very clear that the issue of creating good jobs is uppermost in the minds of American workers. Bernie Sanders appealed to a lot of folks who had a 2-year degree or a 4-year degree, but they couldn't find jobs in most cases, or in many cases, they felt worthy of their education. Donald Trump's constituency, largely high school graduates, hoping to continue what their parents had experienced, which is if you work hard, you can still carve out a good living and support your family. That's turning out to be a very big challenge to that constituency, and of course the people with a 2- and 4-year degree, they could find a job in many cases, but not a job they thought were worthy of their skill sets. So I cannot tell you how important it is in America, where what you do tends to define who you are, for better or for worse, and so having something to do fulfills a lot of the needs that we have as Americans. How important it is to be able to know if you play by the rules, if you get educated, there is a job that will make you feel good and give you that sense of dignity and self-worth. I don't have all the answers to this, but I can tell you that whoever invented the concept of a job should get a Nobel Prize, because at the end of the day, all you want to do is go to bed, you're so tired, and the last thing you want to do is rebel against the government. Bernie's constituency was rebelling against the government. Donald Trump's constituency was rebelling against the government, and I would venture to say at least 40% of the population is feeling the American dream is not working for them. That is not a good thing. That is not a good thing from any perspective. I don't have all the answers to this, but I want to have some answers, and there's at least 4 things I think we can do at every level, whether you be working at city hall, county government, state government, or the federal government. First of all, Bernie had a whipping boy, that was Wall Street. Donald Trump had a whipping boy, that was trade agreements. I think there's some truth that both of those developments have reduced the number of available jobs. But technology, which I'm so proud of what California has done and what Silicon Valley has done and what our great research universities have done, technology has created some problems. But let me just tell you the upside of technology. Silicon Valley is literally inventing the future, from Facebook, Netflix, all the social media programs, all the social media companies. Every great technology, life science company is either headquartered here or started here. The good news and the upside is the jobs pay a lot of money, from $100,000 to $150,000 starting. In some cases, they don't want you to leave the campus, so you can have 3 or 4 different restaurants of free meals because they want you to interact with your employees. And the entire world thinks well of California, Hollywood because of the movies, Silicon Valley because of smartphones and other devices they use. The downside is that innovation puts people out of work. Amazon is proudly boasts, and Amazon is a great company. My wife loves it, just orders everything on Amazon. Amazon has announced in 5 years it will have no employees, all robots, except the last mile, which they make you believe will be someone driving the product to your doorstep, but it will probably be a drone landing on your doorstep and depositing the package. So what's going to happen to truck drivers? What's going to happen to delivery drivers? Same thing with driverless cars. Okay, that's exciting. That's coming 5 or 10 years away. But what happens to Uber drivers? What happens to people who drive trucks delivering freight? What happens to taxi drivers and limo drivers? There's another development called Hyperlink, which is located in LA, and I've actually been to Nevada for their first test. Very exciting. They think they can move cargo from the ports of Long Beach and LA in 2 minutes. 2 minutes, and it's basically like an old conveyor belt. Remember an old drugstore that has those pneumatic tubes? This is the 50s and 60s. You go in and you put your prescription, and the tube would go back, and then the pills would come back. Well, that's what it is. It's like a tube going down. I see some heads nodding at about tree level or traffic light level, and it zips cargo at fantastic rates. Okay, fine. What happens to all the truckers driving the cars? So I'm saying all these innovations and new companies are great, and you can't hold back the future. We shouldn't try. But as government leaders, we need to start focusing on what happens to the people whose jobs are displaced, because we're already at a very low level, I say the lowest since the 1970s. Okay, so here are a couple of things that we can do. There are about 3 million jobs today that are advertised by all the major technology and medical companies, and what they're really looking for are people who can maintain their software and servers. This job pays between $80,000 and $120,000, and they can't find enough people. This is the kind of job that we can train people in high school through vocational training programs. It's also available online if you're a current employee, maybe making $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 a year. You can take 2 or 3 courses online, get your certificate of completion, interview for the job. If they like you, you can upgrade your compensation, feel better about yourself. But every mayor, every governor, every board of supervisors, the president, they all ought to have at least a couple people focused on what do their employers need in their jurisdiction. Are we producing those kinds of people coming out of schools? If not, what can we do in the school system? Not everyone is going to go to college. The people who are not going to go to college need to have technical skills. You can have technical skills and later go back to community college and go to college. So there's no one wants to preclude anyone's future, but we want to think globally. How can we get more people participating, more people pulling the wagon? And again, I don't mean this in any way in a derogatory fashion. They're not sitting in the wagon because they want to sit in the wagon. They're sitting in the wagon because we're not creating enough opportunities for them to pursue the American dream. So that's step one. Step two, we have to start telling young people at a very early age what kinds of job opportunities are available to them. In Virginia, and I talked to Governor McAuliffe a few months ago, the first day you go to school in Virginia, in the ninth grade, first day of high school, they tell you what jobs are available in whatever county your high school is in. By the 11th and 12th grade, they have intern programs with their local employers. So a kid in the ninth grade, even if he's not going on to college, can begin to see where he can be a year or two after he leaves high school. He has a future, he can see it, or she can see it, and that's a good thing, because just to let people go out and wander around and maybe not be very successful at finding employment is not good for them and not good for us. The two other ideas. At most universities and community colleges, the counselors don't interact with you until at least your second year. And in most universities, 4-year degrees, it's your third year. That's way too late. You have to choose your major in a 4-year college at the end of your freshman year. Counselors need to engage year one. Let people know, okay, here are some of the jobs available in California. You want to be an engineer, you'll make at least 6 figures. You want to be an art historian, you'll make $30,000. Now, I was a history major, but that was a different era. We need art historians, but they ought to know early on when they're getting their college loans what their revenue source is going to be, and if they want to be an art historian, fantastic. But if they want to do something else that's going to pay them more money, then at least let them know as early as they can so they can choose a major that can move them in that direction. So what I'm really saying is we are still operating on the theory that sort of the invisible hand of the economy will magically produce jobs for people, which it did for many of us in this room, but that is not happening anymore. And I'm not saying we should have an industrial policy like Europe does, but we should begin as a nation, as a region, and as a state to worry about where are our young people going to land after they leave high school, after they leave community college, after they leave university, what jobs are available for them at the end of the line. My final point is, and I may have mentioned this to you a couple years ago. So years ago, when I was a very, very young boy, the Russians and America were engaged in the Cold War, and the Russians had a spy satellite called Sputnik. You could actually see it with the naked eye as it circled, I see a few nodding heads, as it circled over the United States. And it scared the you-know-what out of you, because you could see this thing, and it was looking at us, and it could not be good, right? No good thing can't be good for us. Good for them, but not good for us. So Eisenhower then the president, and he said, we've got to get our act together. What we desperately need are engineers. If you want to be an engineer, the United States government will pay for your education. And a whole lot of people became engineers, and I think ironically that allowed us, this happened I think in '58, allowed us to, 11 years later, to beat the Russians to the moon, because we had all these engineers coming in. We had national emphasis on them engineers. People got excited about being an engineer. And I think that contributed in no small measure to our being able to land on the moon before the Russians. So what I'm suggesting is every year the Congress and the President ought to agree on what skill sets are most critically needed. And for that year, say 25 or 30% of all the Pell Grants will go to people willing to pursue and acquire those skill sets. Now, are you saying, is that an industrial policy, Governor? Well, I don't think it's an industrial policy. I think it's just best practices, being smart, doing the right thing for young people and giving them every chance to pursue their dream. But if you want to call it industrial policy, you can call it what you want. I don't think this nation can withstand too many more elections like we went through. And if we don't, I remember telling Hillary Clinton, who I'm a strong supporter of, you know, when you're president, you have to do something to put money in the pockets of the middle class, whether it's through the unearned tax credit or a much less expensive way of educating their children. But they have to feel after 4 years their life got better because you were president. And I hope the same thing for President Trump, that he can do something in 4 years to make the lot of the middle class and those striving to get in the middle class feel better. Because the middle class is the glue that holds this country together, and fighting to retain middle class jobs, taking an interest in people who are losing those jobs, letting them know how important they are is critical to America's future. So I'm going to close with this thought. Here's what I would have done to coal miners in West Virginia and Pennsylvania. I would say, you are heroes. You are American heroes. You went underground to dig out the fuel that powered our economy for over 100 years, and you risked your health, and we are not going to leave you behind. I was in Vietnam. I know the traditions of the military. You don't leave anyone behind. We are not leaving you behind. We are finding a job for you. It's our highest priority. We're a job that treats you with respect and dignity and allows you to pursue the American dream. The fact that we are moving on to less carbon-driven fuel sources doesn't mean we don't care about you. We honor your service, we honor your sacrifice, and we are there for you every minute till we find you a new job. And I remember telling Secretary Clinton, I'm not talking about just sending someone to a training program. I'm talking about following through and making sure they get a job. If they get a job, they will be participants in the American dream. If they don't get a job, they're not going to be feeling good about themselves, and that's not good for anyone. So please think about that. I'm sure there are other ideas you have. If there are best practices, please share them with one another. There may be certain regions of this state that are doing a better job at finding a role for their graduates from high school and college. But I think it's critically important to our success as a nation. But I'm confident that California can meet this challenge. There's no challenge that we haven't met when we put our minds to it. And I look forward to working with SCAG to help minimize this problem and show the rest of the world how to do it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Governor Davis. If I could please have our executive team please come up here so we could take a picture with Governor Davis. And let's give him another round of applause. Thank you.